Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Excel and Microsoft Excel. I know we have people joining us over the next couple minutes. People will be signing in, but I'm going to go ahead and kick us off today. Today's Lunch and Learn is actually part of a monthly series that's hosted by the Alumni Campus Employee Committee and sponsored by the UNC Charlotte Alumni Association. As a member of the ACE Alumni Campus Employee Committee, my name is Alicia Bartosch, and I am the Assistant Controller of Compliance at the university, and I will be your facilitator and co-presenter this morning. I'm joined by Jennifer Hurlbert, the Interim Executive Director of Digital Strategy for Academic Affairs in One IT, and I will let her tell you more about herself once I turn the presentation over to her. But I am going to go ahead. If you didn't already notice, today's session will be recorded. So if you do have to dismiss yourself early, a copy of the recording will be made available to everybody who registered for the presentation at a later time. But I hope this morning proves to be engaging and that you get something out of this. And we really appreciate you taking the time out of your lunch break to join us. If you need to turn off your camera to grab a snack or a bite to eat, that's fine. But we really would encourage everyone, if able, to have their cameras on, maybe even update their name in Zoom to add what department you're with or maybe what year you graduated. I've done that with my name, and you can see that I am an ACE from 2005 and 2006, College of Business. And also the department that you're with. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into some of our content this morning. Obviously, we are all here because we probably interact with or have interacted with Excel, and we'd like to know more or like to know, some of the basics, which is what we kind of hope to gather this morning. Hopefully everyone can see the presentation on my screen. I'm seeing
it's my cat. I'm sorry.
Cat is walking. But no, so Excel, I'm sure everyone on this call is fully aware of what Excel is. Excel is a part of the Microsoft suite of applications, and it's software that can be used to store and organize multiple data sets. And so Jennifer and I will both be the first to admit that the one thing that everyone on this call probably has in common is that we feel like we don't know enough when it comes to Excel. As much as you may feel like you are a basic, intermediate, or advanced level user, there is bound to be someone or something who's used something you haven't, or used it in a way you haven't thought you could. So we hope that you gather some insights this morning. We're going to go over the agenda in just a second, but I do want to point out that a large portion of this session is going to be spent discussing formulas. And so I thought it was appropriate to add this to this introductory slide, because anytime you find yourself encountering some sort of manual update within Excel, you should probably clue in and think of that as a red flag that you may be missing out on an opportunity to use a formula. And there may be something out there that can do that for you and do it faster. So what is our afternoon going to look like for the next 50 minutes? I'm going to hand things over to Jennifer, who is going to introduce what we've deemed as the top 10 Excel tips that we think everyone should know. And that does primarily include formulas, which I'll make sure that you all have a copy of this presentation, but there is, and I can add the link in our chat, but this is a link I put here to a list of the top 20, must-know formulas. So I'll make sure that goes in the chat. Thank you, Jennifer. And you have access to that while we're presenting this morning. As well as we're going to go over some shortcuts and formatting capabilities within Excel, and then kind of finish it off with some of the other must-knows that didn't make it quite into our top 10, but they're definitely things that everyone who's using Excel should be aware of and must know. Then we're hoping by halfway through the hour, we can stop, open things up for discussion, utilize the functionality of our breakout rooms, and allow you to discuss amongst yourselves maybe one takeaway that you had from the top 10 tips that we went over, and then begin to share maybe something that you didn't hear us say that we would like to be made aware of so that we can include that in future presentations. And so after the 5 to 10 minute open discussion, we'll open it up for each group to share. And then we'll finish this morning with time, hopefully, to answer any of your questions. So please be active in the chat, use the chat to go ahead and ask questions throughout the presentation, and we can address them at the end. And if we don't have time to address them at the end, we'll make sure that we follow up with individuals on those questions. And to answer a lot of the questions, I'm sure would require some demonstration. So we're planning to do that towards the end of the presentation. All right, but before we start, I did want to gauge the audience and have a feeling of like what formulas, shortcuts, and formatting are you already familiar with? So I'm going to go ahead and launch our first polling question. And this is a polling question where you're going to select all that apply. So get familiar with what you see on the screen. Please go ahead. I'm going to give everybody maybe 45 seconds to provide a response. Hopefully you can see the question. It's what formulas on this list are you already familiar with? And I'm going to leave it open for about 20 more seconds. So if you are able, please take a moment and respond. We've got about half. Oh, we reached half participation. Good. This is one way we're trying to also make sure everybody can feel more engaged with our presentation this morning. We have a lot to discuss in an hour, so we want to keep your attention. All right.
What if you're not familiar with any of the formulas?
That you know what?
You're in the right place, Kevin.
That's great. Yes, thank you, Kevin. Then you are in the right place. Exactly. Then hopefully we won't put you to sleep for the next.
Okay. Oh no. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to end the poll and share these results because this is kind of what I expected. I'm glad to see how many people are already familiar with VLOOKUP and the SUMIF formulas, but I see less and less people may be familiar with some of our other tools to separate or manipulate text and data by using left, right, and middle and rounding. So good. We are going to actually help enlighten some folks this morning who have not been introduced to those functions. All right, so I'm going to now switch to my next polling question. What shortcuts do you use or have you used, or maybe you've just heard of? And I know I don't have a full list of 10 here, and Zoom does limit me to only 10 options in a polling question. So there could be others. I kept it to the ones that we're going to focus on today. Let's do 10 more seconds, give everybody an opportunity to place their votes. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. I am so pleased to see how many people have already become acquainted with Control F. I want to say that that's probably one of my favorite shortcuts. I sometimes forget about the power of Control F when I'm looking for something in a very long document. So it's helpful to know how many times a word is repeated in a document as well. All right, and our final polling question. Do you use any of these format techniques? And we will be going over some of these techniques this morning.
I can't vote.
Yeah, Jennifer, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to vote because you're.
It won't let me vote. Yeah.
No, yep, you can't. But you could steal the screen from me, but don't do that.
I won't do that.
All right, another 10 seconds. I'm really encouraged that we almost have everybody who registered logged in so far this morning. So that means we're going to have a good breakout open discussion time. That's great. All right, I'm ending the poll. And now you should see the results. Another one that wins is sorting. So I'm glad that everybody is familiar with sorting their data. Some of the other functions that are here too, we'll briefly go over, but it looks like we're going to be helping some other folks learn about text to columns today, and maybe even paste special, which are two of our favorites. So, all right, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to my friend Jennifer, who will take us away.
All right. So can we close the poll?
Oh,
there you go. I got it. So hi, everybody. If you don't know me, my name is Jennifer Hurlbert. I am the Interim Director for Digital Strategy for Academic Affairs Support Services. That's quite a mouthful. It means I work for the CIO to support various units throughout academic affairs. I'm also an adjunct, so I teach Info 2130, which is a business intro to computing course that concentrates pretty heavily on Excel. So when they look for someone who could help with this session, they look to me. I am also an alum. I completed a certificate in software information systems in 2016. And I'm in trouble because I haven't signed up for ACE yet, but I'm going to. Go me. So really glad to be here. And please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to everybody. If we don't, we can even talk after the session. So number one, we thought was using the wizard box. So there are more formulas, and I've been teaching this for years. I think 7 years now I've been teaching Excel, and there are formulas I've never seen before. There are probably more formulas in Excel than any of us could ever in our lifetimes master. The good news is you don't have to. There is a formula bar across the top that helps you find things. And so I had this one drop down on logical because it has things like and if. If I was looking for something date related, I might pick the date button. Or if I wanted to do a VLOOKUP, I bet that's under lookup and reference. The other thing I wanted to mention, because we're going to do this a lot, is this wizard box. When you do a formula, you don't even have to, I've been able to write formulas I've never done before, because this prompts you through it. It tells you what to put in each section and essentially writes the formula for you. So you'll see this a few times throughout our presentation, and it's an easy way to write what can be very long, complex formulas where if you leave out a comma, it doesn't work. So I will refer to that often. All right, so we'll start with VLOOKUP. I was glad to hear lots of people used it. Every one of these is here because I've done it wrong. There have been times in my life where I have searched for something or spent time doing something and realized, there's a better way. So in this case, we want to use VLOOKUP to find and look down here at this ID and math. So I want to find the math score for ID number C1004. Now I can pretty easily look at this table and find C1004. This is a simple example. But if I've got 30,000 students, that's a whole nother story. I do not want to be scrolling through or even using Control F trying to find this. So what I do is I write a VLOOKUP. So this is what the formula looks like. And all formulas in Excel start with an equal sign. I will ask you that again. We should have made a poll. So always start your formula with an equal sign. You start typing VLOOKUP. The first thing that goes in is the lookup value. So I am looking up this ID number. Then I'm telling it where to look. So I'm telling it to search this range or this table of information. You can see it's got dollar signs around it. That means it's an absolute reference so that it doesn't shift around as I move. I always refer back to the same data. What's interesting is we didn't get we should have put the dollar signs down here. I just noticed they're here, but not here. But what you don't want to do is if you were to copy the formula down, you want to always refer to your same table range. So you use an absolute reference, meaning these dollar signs, to keep the range anchored in the same place. Then what do I want to return? So it asks me for a column index number, and VLOOKUP quite literally counts 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I'm trying to find the math score for C1004. So I put in 3 as my column index number, what I want to return. And then finally, I put in false, meaning I want an exact match. I don't want something close. I want 1004 or nothing. And if you look out to the right, see how it's prompting you? It's showing you what the results are. If you're getting results, you can assume you're pretty much on the right track. It will prompt you as you click through each one of these boxes. It will explain what should go in there. So this wizard gets you pretty far. It has enabled me to write formulas I've never used before. So that's a VLOOKUP. Oh, I can't advance it. Thank you. So the next set are the ifs. So if will search a list and return a match. So in this case, I always start a formula with an equal sign. So I say if, and I open my parens. The first thing you put in is the logical test. So what am I trying to evaluate? Like, if what? So in this case, if A2, which is this value here, is greater than 0, then you put a comma. Then what do I do if that's true? So if A2 is greater than 0, and A2 in this case is a 5, so is that greater than 0? Yes. So then Excel will do the true part. So it will take B2 and subtract C2 from it. So 19 minus 10, and the answer is 9. If A2 had not been greater than 0, it would have given me the false part. It would have returned the false. Does that make sense? Everybody good? Periodically wave or something so I know you're still awake. Count if is another very powerful one. So if I want to know how many cells meet a certain condition. Now, again, this is pretty simple example. I can count the number of Lucys in here, but we've got 30,000 undergrads. If I'm trying to find data quickly and aggregate it, count if will count the number of records in a set based on a certain condition, right? So I want to find all the people in this range. So I tell it my range. Well, first, what do? Start my formula with an equal sign. Count if, open parens. I choose the range where Excel should look. And then I put in the name Lucy. And because it's text, I need to put quotes around it. You guys see the quotes? And then what it returns, and what it's returned up here is the number 2, how many people were named Lucy. Like I said, kind of simple here, but very useful when you're looking at 30,000 students. Sum if is another valuable one. This one, it sums values when they meet a certain condition. So in this case, I want to only count up the income of my clients whose year-over-year growth is positive. So if you look at the formula, we say equals sum if. First thing that you put in is the range to look in. So I put in, it looks like C2 to C6. So I want to look at everybody whose year-over-year growth is greater than 0. If it is, then I tell it where to sum. So I'm going to add up all of these client incomes, but I'm not going to get them all. I'm only going to get what? The 650, the 580. I'm going to skip these two because those two clients year over year is negative, and then I'll get the 2,400. So what it does is it sums them all if they meet the condition I set, which this is a positive number. Does that make sense? All right, let's keep going. All right, my favorite. I cannot tell you how many times I have done this the wrong way, and that's why we pick these. So I have a data set. Let's say I've got a whole bunch of posts from various social media, Facebook and Twitter. I know how many followers. Maybe they're discussing, what to wear out to dinner. Well, we're going to graduation. What should I wear? Is it casual? Do I wear a nighttime attire? Maybe I need business casual. So how can I quickly aggregate this? I cannot tell you how many times I have sorted by, let's sort by site, then put a line in there, put a blank line and then sum up the numbers. I have done this the hard way plenty of times until I discovered, there's a better way. So if you would go next slide, please. You use a pivot table. So what I did is I highlighted all of that data and I inserted a pivot table, which we're going to show you how in a second. And then I pick the site as my rows. So I've got all my different sites, Facebook, Twitter. I decided to sum the number of followers and then I sum the number of likes. What's great about pivot tables, like this is a picture, so we can't do it, but you can move these around. You can change the way these values are done. This doesn't have to be a sum. It could be an average or a max or a min. There's a number of different ways that you could aggregate. Maybe I want the average number of likes on Facebook. I could have thrown in the attire, have the average number of people that like business attire. So it's very flexible. Little hard with this being a picture, but you can move these around until it looks the way you want. And next slide. I keep arrowing. So this is how you do it. To insert one, I had selected my data. I go up to I'm on the insert menu and I just insert a pivot table. You see that button? It's on the far left. And then this shows you the areas. So you've got filters, columns, rows, and then the values are what you're calculating. All right, this is another good one. I cannot tell you how many times. So say I want to extract text and if we look at the first example, we see James, Larry in the UK, David Smith in probably California. What if I just want to get those last two digits for where they live? I can write a formula using write. So all formulas start with an equal sign and then write. And then I tell it that the cell to reference. So I look at A4 and then I start counting. In this case, it's right. So I start counting from the right. 1, 2, and that's all. So my result is UK. So if you see here, it's right. It tells you where to look. And then you tell it how far, how many characters in to count. And that's what it returns. Similarly, left, if I want to get, in this case, I want to look at this ABM and I want to return the first 3 characters. So it pulls out just the ABM or in the BKC. Right and left, I think right's been my favorite to use because when you want to pick like the right 4 digits of someone's 800 number because you're trying to anonymize, that's a really valuable way to use it. Mid is a little challenging. I don't know how often I've used it, but it allows you to select the middle, how far in you want to go and how many characters to pull out. So in this case, I look at A10. I want to go 14 characters into the middle, and then I want to pull out the next 3 characters after that. So I get KTE or KTO. So these are 3 ways that you can easily extract text without having to actually go in and pick it out. All right, next slide. How are we doing on time? All right, so text to columns. Here's another one, and I'm guilty of this. I don't know how many of you are. I pull a web focus report and it's got the names together. Mike Anderson is listed together. And I want to say, dear Mike. I don't want to write a letter that says, dear Mike Anderson, comma. So I want to extract the name, the first name and the last name. And they're together in one column. And we've all done it. I've put an extra column in and copied, cut and pasted the last name over. Well, when you get into large data sets, that's just impossible. So text to columns is a great way to separate text. I use it a lot on web focus reports. So in this case, we decided to separate based on comma. And what's important is picking the right delimiter. It could just be a space. What is it between your cells that is different? Is it a comma? Is it a space? Is it a tab? You can tell by looking at the data. And Excel will prompt you. It usually gets it right, but you have to keep an eye on it because it doesn't always. Oh, next cell. All right, concatenate. So we just took our data apart. Let's put it back together. So concatenate is a great way to combine fields as well as insert things. You might want to add text or other, maybe I want to say, dear James. I could concatenate the word dear with the field value. So I'm doing a mail merge. So if you look at this example on the left, equals, concatenate. Then I choose my first item, which is A2. You put in a comma, and then I want to put a space in. So what I do is I put quote, space, quote. So that'll insert a space. And then another comma, and then I put my second value, the 45%, and my formula, and you see what I get here. It's 10 with a space and the 45%. I did a similar version with Larry James, who we had previously separated. If I wanted to put him back together, but I don't want Larry and James smashed together. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. Okay. But can everyone hear me? Everybody okay? Good. So if I want to put Larry James back together and I don't want to smash them together, I want a space in there. I use that wizard box, which I think is so helpful. So my first text field will be A2, Larry. The second one will be a space, a quote, space, quote. And then the third is B2, that's James. And so what will this produce? I'll get Larry James with a space in the middle. So I broke him apart earlier with text columns. Now I'm putting him back together with concatenate. Poor Larry's been through it today. Next slide. All right, round and truncate. So this is one, this is an interesting one. I learned about truncate kind of recently. And the important difference here is how they work. When you round a number, you pick the number you're going to round, and then you tell it the number of decimals to round to. So in this case, I want to take 314 with all these numbers, all these decimals after. I want to round it down to 2 decimals. And so you can see I get back 314.16. Round takes into account those rules that if it's 49% or less, it goes down. If it's 51% or higher, it goes up. What if it's exactly 50? I don't actually think I know the answer to that. All right, during our breakout session, we're going to find out, what if you're dead on 50%? Does it go up or down? I think it goes up. I don't actually know. We're going to find that one out. That'll be interesting. So what truncate does is something a little slightly differently. It strips the decimals. So let's say I want to take that same 314 and I want to have 5 decimals afterwards. It does not round up or down. It just cuts it off at whatever number you say. So if I say 2 digits and that's it, it does not round it up or down. It just stops wherever you were. I use that in grading because I don't curve. And so if somebody gets a 99.7, I will truncate it. They got a 99. All right, next slide. All right.
Jennifer,
Yeah.
are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. Okay.
Are you
I
back?
wasn't sure. I'm not back. My screen still shows me as muted and I can't open the chat or see any activity or click on anything, but I'm able to move the slides forward. I just wanted to make sure you could hear me because I wanted to go back to the concatenate
Uh-huh.
function and just chime in and say another reason why you would,
Abs-
combine data.
Please
So
do.
it ties back into our second tip about VLOOKUP. Sometimes you're wanting to look up information, but you don't think that you have a unique value in order to do a lookup with. And so it's going to, if you do a VLOOKUP and you put to find an exact match, and let's say you have duplicate values in that table for that unique identifier, it's just going to return the first one it finds first. It's not going to return the value of maybe the one you're looking for. So in order to create a unique value, maybe you need to take the value you want to look up and combine it with some other unique value that'll differentiate. So let's say it's the same person on a different day and you want to see what they did. So you would concatenate the two fields, that would become your unique value, and you would use that as your lookup value between tables. As long as you have two common fields that you can concatenate together, in order to create that, you can look that up.
That's a great example. Perfect. And we've now added, that's cool that we've added on to our processes. So shortcuts, invaluable. One of the greatest things ever invented is Control Z, which is undo. I think there's no denying one of the best inventions ever is no, I didn't mean that. Go back. So Control Z. Now it's different depending on, Excel, Word, some websites, how many steps back you can go. So when you use Control Z, you can usually go back a couple of steps, but you can't go back infinitely. It's definitely to the last save, but it does vary by program that you're in. Control F for find. I think we talked about the value of that in the beginning. I like that one because you can use it on websites. You can use it on super long documents. It applies to just about everything. So this is actually larger than Excel. We're getting tips that help for lots of things. F2 lets you edit the value of the cell. I know you can just click on a cell and enter data, but sometimes when it's embedded in other things, you've got images and formulas, it's easier to use F2. Control T will tableize your data. That's just like going up into the header, and there's a place where you make my data into a table. You can also use Control T. Control Shift up or Control Shift down. Now, who's guilty? I've done it. I have scrolled and scrolled and scrolled to get to the bottom of a document, or realized I'm at the bottom and I need to be at the top, and I have scrolled and scrolled, and it's probably 30 seconds, but it feels like forever. So it turns out there's a very quick and easy way where you hold down Control Shift and then your arrow key at the same time, and it will take you to the top or it'll take you to the bottom. So saves a lot of time scrolling.
I would caution people though, if you think you have the whole data selected, make sure there's no blank rows or blank cells in the data that you're trying to highlight. I actually ran into that same problem this morning. I realized that every change in the data had a blank row, and I was like, oh dear, I can't select the whole table. I have to start at the top, scroll down, shift, and select the bottom in order to do the whole table. So instead, I was like, well, I'm going to filter this and get rid of all the blank rows first thing. So
absolutely. Good example. Alt Enter, it creates a new line in the same cell. I think, word wrapping in Excel has always been kind of maddening. And so this is how you can make that happen. Control Home will always take you to the top left corner, just all the way up to the beginning. And Control End takes you to the very last cell that contains data. You don't want to go to the end, because what does Excel have, like 53,000 rows or something? It just goes to the last data containing cell. So next slide. All right, some more shortcuts. Control A, or alternatively, if you click on this little tiny arrow here in this top corner, that will select everything. So I might want to I have all this data and maybe I want to turn it into a cell turn into a table. I could click on this and it will highlight everything, but you have to be very careful with this because it'll actually highlight everything. If you click that and then say create a table, Excel will crash. It will spin. You have essentially selected all 53,000 rows and all the columns over to, that it selects everything. But there are occasions you might want to do it. Up here, we're looking at auto sum. So let's say I wanted to sum all of these sales very quickly. I could highlight everything in this column, click auto sum, and it would add them up and I would get a sum right here at the bottom. You'll notice there's a little tiny arrow next to auto sum. You could also average it or get the minimum. There are other formulas within there besides sum. So sum is the most commonly used, but if you want average or something else, use that little tiny arrow and that will let you do it. So to copy a formula or series, so what we're doing down here, this is interesting. So we're looking at scores, Dan's test score, Wendy's test score, let's say, and I want to divide them by 100. And I want to always divide by the same denominator. I don't want that to change. So what I'm doing is I'm using an absolute value. So I take Dan's score in B3 and I divide it by this 100 up here in B1. And you see how it's got the dollar signs around B1, but not the B3? So when I divide, I'm always going to reference that same 100, but I can copy the formula down to different people's cells, and their score will also be divided by 100. So it'll adjust as you move down from 98 to 76 to 55, but it'll always refer back up to the 100, the anchored denominator for this. Sorry, I'm getting weird messages that my internet is low. So
you're fine.
Okay.
I was going to say, Jennifer, and then there's the box at the corner, at the bottom right corner, where you would double click that. And once you've got your formula in, it would drag down and auto fill the formula down.
Gotcha. All right. So I think we have one more. Two more. Mm-hmm. Conditional formatting. So this is great. I use conditional formatting all the time. If you drop it down, you will see there are many, many possibilities. And within each of these, there are other options. So I might want, the top 10% of my class. So I'll say greater than 90, less than something, between two numbers. So all of these are options. And within each option, there are more. So I encourage you to play with it. A very useful way to use it is to highlight I'm going to say this right, duplicate values. So if you highlight a whole column of cells and then tell it to find duplicate values, it will color code them and you can find them quickly and either correct them or delete them if they truly are duplicates. When you discover there are strange colors on your worksheet and you don't know why, or you've created a couple of conditional formatting rules and forgot, that's often what's going on. People forget this one. If you go to manage rules, see this last option. I'm highlighting it with my cursor, but I don't know if you guys can see that. But the last option down here is manage rules. That will open this box over here on the right. And you can see what rules have been applied to the worksheet, what set of cells. You can adjust them, you can delete them. So we could write custom rules ourselves, like all cell values that are greater than 80, or we might just want to clear all of these out of here because we inherited this worksheet and it's full of color coding we don't understand. So manage rules is what opens that up and shows you what's already been programmed in. And the last one is Format Painter. I am recently a convert. I never saw the value of it until recently. With Format Painter, when you cut and paste from a lot of different sources, it's probably when it's most useful because you want everything to look the same in the end. So if I've brought things in and there are different fonts and some are aligned at top and some are aligned at the bottom, What I would do is click on a cell with a format I like. Then I would go up to my home screen and click on this little paintbrush guy, Format Painter. And then literally you just paint across all of the cells that you want to have that same format. So it's a great way if you've ended up copying and pasting things from lots of different sources or other worksheets to make it look consistent quickly. You don't even have to know what font it is. It'll make it match. So that turns out to be more useful than I thought. So here's some other must knows. I'm not going to read every one of them to you, but we thought these were some of the highlights. That article in the beginning is a really good reference. Make sure you guys take a look at that as it goes through these. And if anybody sees anything they're unfamiliar with here, we could talk about it. Copying worksheets from one to another. How to filter, sort data, hiding data. That's interesting. How to hide a worksheet in Excel. And we're running out of time, so I'm going to stop talking, but you might look at your worksheet and realize there is hidden data. And that's always an interesting key that somebody's hidden a worksheet. You might want to unhide it and see what's going on in there. That's where formulas are often stored. So I think with that, I better stop talking so that we can do our breakout.
Yeah, and I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to have issues trying to launch this. If I do, I'm going to disconnect from the meeting and rejoin. It may switch you to host.
Make me a co-host. I think
you already are a co-host. I think but I also can't seem to find the leave button in order to get out of the meeting. So I may have to close the application altogether. I really hope that it doesn't end the session, but I'm going to try and open breakout rooms now. What we tried to do is we're going to give you, I'm going to probably shorten it to 5 minutes. We're going to have 4 groups, 4 rooms, and these 2 questions are what we really want you to focus on when you go to the room. One new thing that you may have learned today, and one thing that you didn't hear us talk about that you do know and that you'd like to share with the group. And then when we all come back together, you can choose to select a spokesperson if they want to speak up. Otherwise, in the chat, we'd like you to just go ahead and put in things that you either have questions about or something that you might want to share with the rest of us so that we can incorporate that in future trainings. So I'm going to try this. And it is not wanting to launch. So I'm going to try and get out of because I don't think I can give you.
I don't have the option.
Right. All right. I'm going to try and exit.
So if you get out, I'll do it. I think maybe.
I'll be back.
Okay.
If I can get this to even let me out. It won't let me select the screen at all.
I don't have the breakout room option.
I know. Well, then I think that we might have, some of our participants have already left. So why don't we not worry about breakouts? We only have 12 folks on the call. Why don't we just go ahead and open it for, full group discussion? So if you feel comfortable, either put it in the chat or unmute yourself and just share one thing that you might have learned, today. And then something that you didn't hear us talk about that you use that would be helpful for everyone else.
Yes, we did record it and we will make it available somehow when we figure out where we'll put it.
It's going to be saved to the cloud, and I'll get the file to Alumni Association, and they'll end up publishing it, and we'll send it out to everybody who registered as well.
And again, anything.
Go ahead. I was going to say, is there anyone who would like to see any of these tips demonstrated? We tried to provide images to make it easier to follow, but if there's one in particular you'd just like us to show you live, let us know. Otherwise,
would it have been more easy to understand if we were in Excel doing this demonstration? Do you think was looking at slides good, or would it have been better to be in Excel actually doing these things?
I thought the slides were good, but I could see the advantage of actually being in Excel and doing these things. Um, I actually learned about the format painter, and I thought that was really good and helpful.
Mhm.
The one thing that I did want to know about was the freeze panes.
Yes, we
Yeah.
didn't cover that.
And it's on the must-know list of items. Freeze panes is there, but if you'd like to see it demonstrated, I'm sure that Jennifer could take away sharing the screen. She should be able to. It may ask me to let her, and I might not be able to, but
Yes, it let me. Okay, so
yay!
and I was in Excel playing with Larry James. I was
Ah,
And guess
concatenating
what?
him just a little while ago. So you could, there's a couple ways to do it. So we go to view and you can freeze panes. You can freeze just the top row. Are you guys seeing Excel? I just want
mhm.
to, okay, make sure. If I freeze the top row, then just the top stays. I can also freeze just the first column. So as I scroll to the right, I will always see whatever's in that first column. Or you can, I'm going to unfreeze. I think there's a, if I were to highlight a selection and then freeze them, it'll freeze everything in that area I just picked.
That's helpful.
Good, good. And there's Larry. So I'm going to unfreeze. And I'm reading
And
the chat.
Jennifer, I'm not sure if this would be helpful or not, but a lot of what we discussed about Excel today, a lot of these functions and these formats and shortcuts are very similar to functions inside of Google Sheets as well, if you use them. So like Google Sheets also offers freeze panes, and all those shortcuts will, for the most part, I think, work within a Google Sheet. And
They're
the
in
formulas,
there.
obviously the formulas are the same as well.
You have to find them. They're in
Yeah,
different places, but
they
if
are.
you can find them, they're pretty much all in there in Google Sheets. Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing I learned, I didn't know that you could, I think it was Alt Enter, and you can go to a new line in a cell. Hello, where have you been all my life? Like,
Right?
okay, I this session was worth that right there. Cause I get so, I'm like spacing until it like, you know, so now I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. So that was one new thing I did not know about that I will definitely use probably on a daily basis at this point.
And the same way, I have been putting spaces in, and then you move the column size, and it all goes. Yes, I'm guilty of that too. So that was a terrific tip. Absolutely.
This is great discussion. Is there anyone else?
Well, I don't want to take up all the time with my questions, but you asked. So if you could pull up your Excel spreadsheet again and show me how to get to the wizard.
How to get to the wizard. Okay, so I was just doing Alt Enter. So I'm going to Control Z. And so I had to play with it when you were saying it, Stacy. So I'm going to hit Alt Enter, and it sure does put an extra line in there. I just, wow. So how to get to the wizard. So I want to write a formula. Maybe I want to concatenate Larry James back together, right? So all formulas start with an equal
Equal.
sign. You guys, I teach undergrad, so you're probably hearing me. I start typing my formula and look at what it does. It helps prompts me. So I'm going to pick concatenate, and then I see this little FX. That will open up the wizard box. So now I can select Larry as my first thing, and then maybe I want to put, I don't know, a dash. And I'm putting quotes around it because it's text. Then I'm going to select my next thing. Not really, I was kidding. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to select my next one and see what it's doing out to the right. It's showing me what it's adding up. So then I say, okay, and I've got Larry James concatenated. So it's this little FX button that takes you to the wizard. It usually helps to start typing your formula first, like if I was going to do a VLOOKUP. And then hit the button, and then it'll bring it up. And like I said, this has been invaluable for me. I've been able to do formulas that I'd never seen before based on it. It prompts you. You can see as I click through this, it's telling me what each of these mean.
It'll also tell you when you will return an error message or a non-valid response. Like, I love using it for that. So let's say you're writing a very complicated if statement that has like, if this, then if this, then, and it's so complicated that you're like, whoa, you can go into the wizard and see if it's going to return a value or not. And then keep playing with all the different text fields until it does return the value that you're looking for. And then you're like, okay, good, I got my formula right.
So I'm not sure it works with concatenate, but I just put an if error around this. So right after the equal sign, I put if error, and then here's my formula, and then I put a comma, and then I put some text. So instead of seeing like all those hashtags and pound signs and weird garbage when Excel fails, it'll put a clean English message that says, hey, you've picked the wrong person, or there's something wrong with your formula, look at this. So if error is another good one if you're doing something that's going to be viewed by executives who don't want to see weird.
I don't know how we missed that one in our top 10, because I use that one all the time now.
I use that one all the time.
In front of like all VLOOKUPs and other formulas.
It's great for VLOOKUP because if it can't find the person, you don't want to see a bunch of pound signs, and I guess they're hashtags now, but you know what it looks like when Excel throws an error. So this would let you put clean text in place. Good thought. Anybody else? So I'll stop sharing. I can get out of here. Wait. Okay. So we'll send out our emails with the recording, and you guys, you're welcome to let's share information. If you get stuck on a problem and you're at work and you want to, a quick tip, feel free, reach out.
Yep.
Oh, good. I'm really glad. I'm glad. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I know that. Okay, good.
Yeah, we hope everyone enjoyed this topic. And if you have any other launch and learn topic ideas that you'd like to see in the future, also let myself know. We have other members of the ACE committee on this call today too. Thank you guys for your support. Appreciate it. But yeah, we are always looking for new, better ways that we can help provide networking opportunities and professional development opportunities for our alumni campus employees. So get the word out, let us know what you need, and we'll see you next time.